All right, folks, this is Jack Antonio here of Do You Know Jack? And on the line with me today is Eric Harris of Gygax. Eric the Cleric. How you
Yeah,
doing, man?
pretty good, man. How you doing?
I don't, this is just a nerdy thing, but I just realized your name rhymes with your character class. I'm sure I'm not the
Yeah.
first one to think of that. Maybe you did that on purpose.
Uh, yeah, oh, yeah, I definitely did. I was just like, it'd be hilarious. I'm like, whenever I play RPGs, I never play, like I've never played paladins or clerics or anything. So,
Yeah.
but in this instance, I took the opportunity. I saw it and I seized it.
Yeah, I can now. This is gonna show my age a little bit, but way back, in the early to mid '80s, they put out these basic set editions that came in boxes
Mhm.
where you would have like the DM book and the player book and a full set of dice and everything. And I can remember on the red box edition, there was a sample playthrough that you could run through, and it had you, rolling your stats and stuff. And you run into a cleric in the dungeon, and the cleric gets bitten by a snake and dies. Like, they just seem wimpy the way they're portrayed by the Dungeons and Dragons people. But if you understand anything about Dungeons and Dragons, they can be pretty powerful when used correctly.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially if like you're gonna do some sort of like playthrough in like catacombs or crypt or something like that. Like Turn Undead being a fucking free spell.
Yeah.
It's just like that's so heavy. But I also like the idea of the duality of war and then peace with the clerics. Like they're
Yeah.
skilled at like yeah.
Well, not to read too much into your choice of class here, man. We're just really geeking out right off the start. but, but
Yeah.
but I mean, you could be like healing people with the majesty of rock. I mean, there could be or like religiously
Well, that's
bringing
our
rock and
dual
roll.
class.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's the bards in us.
Yeah, I just joined a D&D group just a couple of days ago, and they needed a cleric, so I should be one to talk.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah.
sort of,
You already created?
yeah, I did. I rolled really low stats for dexterity and intelligence, though. But I have an
That's
18.
okay.
I have an 18 in charisma, so I can use that to my
Oh, so
advantage.
he's dumb, but everybody loves him.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's a this is second edition, and he's a musical cleric, but because the dexterity is low, he kind of sucks at playing the lute. So like,
There you go. But people are just like, he's giving it a good try, though.
yeah, exactly. Unlike yourself, good sir, who you tend to have the well, at least in this incarnation of your projects, you definitely have the Phil Lynott bass style down pat, and I know there's been a lot of comparisons to Thin Lizzy being bandied about.
Yeah, Phil's always been like a big influence, but it's not like I don't like uh kind of like systemically like study and like try to get everything on point. It's just I think from enough emulation, eventually just kind of came this like assimilation
Yeah.
of my play style like in general. But like man, I can still like sometimes like I practice. It's like you've been playing like shuffle boogie blues for so long, but like sometimes I'll just like rip into like super metal-y shit, but I don't know. I don't have an interest in like doing that, like putting any of that into our music. But yeah, man, Phil's a man, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, now where did the idea? I mean, apart from the fact that you're an obvious fan of RPGs and stuff, I mean, where did the idea come from to sort of form sort of, I guess, Dungeons and Dragons themed band?
Well, actually, I like to give credit where it's due, and in this case, that credit goes to my friend Martin DePedro
Uh huh.
from Los Angeles. I remember one time, like a long time ago, when I was in another band on Metal Blade called Gypsyhawk, and we were eating food, and I believe it was Thai food, and we were just like, shooting the shit, catching up and lunch, and then he was like, man, like we should start like a heavy metal band about like dragons and stuff like that. just call it Gygax. And I was like, God damn, that's so brilliant. But like Martin, he does like, you know, he's like an ideas man. It's like he never like acted on anything.
Yeah.
So after Gypsyhawk, like that idea just like kept pinging at me, and I was just like, well, I mean, with Gypsyhawk, like I'm already singing about fucking frost dragons and stuff like that. So I was like, why not, you know, just take it to the next level and make it, just make it really fun. Just to combine both things, like what I really enjoy, put them together, and then so it's just kind of like, that's where the idea came from, was Martin, but yeah, man, it was, I don't know, I don't know what else to say.
Well, you know, I was thinking, like, even with the D&D thing aside, like, Gygax is a pretty fucking killer name to start, so you've got that going for you already.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's when I thought of it, you know, or like when I was like, oh man, like maybe I should put this into practice, I was just like, oh, whatever, this is gonna be goofy and like nobody's gonna get it, but like the name just has like an edge to it that you're like, damn, dude, this is so tight, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Have you have any members of the Gygax family been in contact with you by any chance about the band at all, or?
Yeah, actually, I managed to locate and talk to both Gary's sons, Luke and Ernest. And they were both like surprisingly just like, wow, this is cool, man. Like they're like, rad, like keep it on, you know, keep it up. So we've sent them, you know, we send them copies, and like I occasionally talk to them, and I'd like to like, you know, do something with them one day. Like I know that they do Gary Con up in Lake Geneva. So we've been discussing like maybe, you know, getting on that, going up there and doing that. So yeah, man, like it's cool, like being able to talk to them, because you're just like, whoa, what the fuck? Like it's so surreal, you know, that like the living blood of like, you know, this veritable legend is like just like a tangible person, just like you and me, you know. And it's like it's just like it's a trip being able to like equate that, you know, past your sense of just like idolization.
Yeah. But I mean, I think historically, though, at least, you know, when you were a young fella, you didn't have a whole lot of time playing RPGs, though, right?
No, I grew up in like a really Christian, like strict, like home. It was just a weird kind of thing. And so it was like, it was after the time, but still, you know, lingering in the South, where people had the notion of like, oh, Dungeons and Dragons is just like, that's all about Satan and the devil. And so like it was very restricted. But me and my friends still managed, like, even though we couldn't get like handbooks and stuff like that, like we took, you know, pieces, like fractured knowledge from like, you know, role-playing games, and we would create our own. And I remember doing that a lot, you know, like just like making, like drawing and like making up stories for our characters, and then like figuring out like making an actual engine in which to like, you know, play a game. And you know, it wasn't long after that then I finally was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna start playing. But yeah, man, I mean, like the RPG element has just like always been with me, and it's like D&D has always been a really cool thing. It's like something I've been into when it's like since I was a kid. Like games in general, it's just something I've been into since I was a kid. And the thing I liked about D&D, and I always thought it was so asinine that my, you know, parents were like so like like adamant about like not like that not being a thing, but it's like D&D teaches you like, you know, social like manners, and like kind of keep like also like it teaches you like how to like work out problems, you know, instead of just being like, you know, reactionary. So, but yeah, so it's always been like really something that's been a big part of me.
Yeah, I remember in the 80s during the Satanic Panic, you know, there was a lot of weird shit going on with D&D, and people like dying for their characters, and you know, if their character died in real life, and people going crazy. And you know, I actually Googled really quick. So, some of the examples, you know, the movie Mazes and Monsters was you know, I think with a
Tom
young
Hanks.
with a young Tom Hanks is
Yeah.
based on an actual guy.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah,
See,
I mean,
that's fucked up,
loosely
man.
there was other cases too of people like somehow using. I think there's an actual term called the Dungeons and Dragons defense, where you commit acts of crime for your characters in real life or something. Like, people just were taking it way further probably than they needed to, I suppose.
Yeah, of course, but you get that like that media and social just like gossip and like rumors, and you start to spread that, and it becomes pop culture, and then people who are afflicted with actual mental disabilities, catch on, they latch onto those things, and like it somehow like makes it, gives them like an okay to like kind of do weird things, but like I can't imagine those stories were like, it was like a very like reoccurring thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like you said, the media tends to blow out of proportion the, rare instance of somebody doing something that they, shouldn't be
Yeah,
because
man.
of mental health and whatnot.
Yeah, it's always be skeptical of everything and just always question.
Yeah. Now, I was just gonna say, I do remember you working a few years back with Gypsyhawk, but I mean, that project sort of went south on you, right? Like, what? I mean, I don't know how much you want to go into detail about it, but I mean, is this a classic case of creative differences sort of causing things to fracture?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of that and also a mixture of like learning and personality types. So it's like I feel like I'm not the easiest person to work with, which is
Uh
why
huh.
I'm super grateful for Bryant, because he and I just like work. It's so cohesive. It's like we don't try. It just shit happens, and we're just like, oh man, awesome. But with Gypsyhawk, it's it was like one of those things where like the guitar player wanted to take it like super metal, like ripping metal, and then the drummer wanted to play like 311 and Deftones stuff, and I was just like, God damn, like I'm not on board with this stuff. So it eventually, like, I think that and just like excessive like alcohol and drug use probably just like kind of buckled everyone down into this like hubris of like what they thought they were.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just it's, and then like from there you get like flaring egos and tensions and stuff, but it just went south. But I always look back at it, and it's like it wasn't like a bad thing. It was like I definitely saw the decay and the crash, but I was just like it was such a clear moment for me because we had just gotten Bryant, and he and I just kicked off super hard, and everything we played was great. And I had noticed, like, sometimes we'd talk about partying and stuff like that, but then when I had mentioned songs about, like, stuff I was really into, like dragons, like fantasy books, people responded, and then it just kind of started, like, being like, hey, man, maybe I should be doing something else.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I remember, the record you put out on Metal Blade. I remember us having this conversation years ago now, and you were mentioning, Game of Thrones references, and this was back when maybe season 2, and not maybe even just season 1 had just come out.
Yeah, I got into those books when I was touring with Skeleton Witch, and, like, that shit just changed my life. So, like, when I went to do Gypsyhawk, I remember I had a bunch of inspiration for it already.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, I guess maybe the one unfortunate thing about it is that you guys had the backing of Metal Blade Records, which traditionally is almost like a from what I've heard anyway. Maybe this is not your experience, but they're kind of like a family the way they work with the bands, and Brian is usually
Oh yeah,
I'm
no,
taking it
they're
from
definitely
the
not.
no, that's not your
Yeah, that's
experience.
that's another thing, man. It's just like that's like one of those like misconceptions of like that's like true glamour magic is like I've had people come up to us being like, oh man, you guys are on Metal Blades, like where's your bus? And it was like, what the fuck, like there's no bus, man, like and it's just like it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, Metal Blade's got a name and they have a reputation, so it's easy for them to get their foot in the door for like opportunities and stuff like that.
Uh
But
huh.
that was another like big downfall of the band is like that they were just like pressuring us to write stuff, saying that they didn't have creative content or creative control over what we were writing. And then I remember every time I would send them like demos, and they were just like, oh, this. It was like their AR person too, who like is just not a musician. It was just like, oh yeah, it needs to be better, and I was just like, I can't do this with you guys, like. So it was just like one of those things. It was like it was cool to be like, yeah, we were in the in crowd for a bit, but it definitely is not, it's not the same thing where it's like, oh, we look after our own and take care of each other. I definitely did not find that to be the the
Yeah.
aspect that people really push on it.
It did seem though like, a lot of the more, name hard rock and metal labels sort of had their version of Gypsyhawk though. Like I think, Scorpion Child was right around that circa 2012 time period that you guys were, coexisting in, and it was a thing. I'm not sure now. What's your experience with Gygax? Because you're sort of got the same kind of classic rock vibe. I mean, is there still a pretty decent market? Like, is there still a good vibe going around for that, genre? I mean, I suppose your obvious answer would be yes, but
I mean, like, I don't really know. That's a really hard question to answer because, like we don't play music because we're like trying to do people and they're giving us money and shit.
yeah, no,
Brian and I just write things that we're just like, hey, this is fucking cool, and if we like it, like we jam on it, and like we don't try to like put it in people's faces by being like, oh yeah, you fucking love this. It's just like we get so excited and so passionate about it that we're just like, well, I don't give a fuck, man. Like it's, like I feel like there's definitely, when something's good, like, it resonates, like no matter what genre or whatever it is, like when there's soul in the music, like you can feel it, and it's a tangible thing. Yeah, I mean, like all the responses have been great, and like our new record just came out, and that has been doing exceptionally well. And I think one of the things that changed with Gygax too and Gypsyhawk is just, like we just kind of like let go with this band. We don't really have an agenda. We're not trying to like tour forever and conquer the world or whatever. We're just making music because I found that playing with Gypsyhawk, Metal Blade, and bands before that, it's just like the industry always stresses like tour as much as you can, tour all the time, and it's like, yeah, but then you're sacrificing so much for like a 1 in a million chance. And it's like, I'd much rather go about that by just, creating an art and then just being like, yeah, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, that's fine.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, you did mention the recent record, Second Edition, which came out just, about a week and a half ago, March 16th. I think on Creator Destructor Records. Is that still
Creator Destructor Records?
Yeah.
And that label is great, man. I just gotta say that.
That's awesome. Well, I thought maybe really quickly here, we could just kind of go track by track, and you can throw down whatever you want to say about each one, musically, lyrics-wise, whatever, and then we could go from there, I guess.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, so your lead-off track, Dice Throwers and Rock and Rollers. What do you got for that one?
So that was a title that. I think that was developed from Stage Banter, and then that went into an idea for that was what the album was going to be called. But then when I had the opportunity to make it Second Edition, I explained to the dudes like this is going to be a much more there's much better options for us. Yeah, so Dice Throwers and Rock and Rollers, it was like a title, but we like there was nothing really to it. And then I remember I came back from recording demos with the band Huntress for like 3 days, just being up forever. And Bryant and he was like, I have this riff idea. And so we sat in my garage and we just nailed it out like in about an hour. And then it was just, yeah. So like that track was just really cool. I remember we were really stoked on it at the time. I'm not sure if this is the kind of information that.
No, whatever you want to throw out there. It makes it worth it is the next one.
Yeah, that was a stomping riff that Bryant had, and I remember we were just like, "Oh, dude, this rules." But again, that song is just about it's about why we dress up on stage and play like rock and roll that we just love to. It's just like it all makes it worth it to us.
Yeah, the Lascivious Underdark. That's an interesting title for a song. I'm not even sure I know what lascivious means, and I'm somewhat educated.
Lascivious is. Yeah, it's like a lewd or like, kind of like crass, more like in a sexual manner. So that was cool because that was actually an old song from Gypsyhawk that we repurposed. And then I got better, I got like more of an idea of like what I wanted to write the song about. So the song is about an Illithid or mind flayer, stalking its prey in the Underdark, which is a woman, and instead of like singing, kind of like the typical rock and roll anthem about how I want your body and like, let's make love and all that, it's just more like a sapiosexual thing where it's like, God, your brain, like your intelligence, everything, like I just want all of you. And then so it just kind of worked out.
Yeah.
Like I just over-explained that, but
No, I think it's good. Pure Hearts, now, in my opinion, this is the most Thin Lizzy sounding track on the whole record. It's almost like you ripped, something right out of the pages of Boys Are Back in Town, like the Jailbreak record on this one.
Yeah, man. I was really stoked about that. I have no idea how that happened. I was in our practice room by myself one day, and I heard the guitar line in my head, and I was like, oh, okay. And so I started singing the guitar line, and then I played my bass with it, and then it was like a cute kind of sounding like riff, but then we just kind of kept going with it, and it didn't take us long. We just like kind of just steamrolled right into like just writing that whole thing, and it sounding like it did. It was, I guess it sounds super Lizzy, of course, because all my influence is just
Well, even your vocals, I think, on this one kind of have a bit of that Phil swagger going that maybe some of the other tracks do.
Yeah,
because
there's a lot of stuff that happened in there that just kind of came.
I often have felt like with your voice, especially thinking back to the Gypsyhawk days, you've got a little bit of growl that almost gives your, the timbre of your voice more of like a young Gene Simmons quality. But in this Pure Hearts, you're sounding very, very Phil Lynott.
Oh, that's cool, man. Awesome. Yeah. I never really think about my singing at all. So it's it's just interesting to hear how people perceive it.
Yeah. Song of the Silver Hands.
Song of the Silver Hands was, I think it was another one of Bryant's riffs. I guess it's a riff machine. So he brought this one out, and we were like, fuck yeah, man, this is like a burner, like we were super into it. And as we were writing it, just kind of, I don't know, it's developed this like big band style, and I remember one of my friends, I was out of topics at the moment, so I was talking to one of my friends, and he had mentioned the Harpers from the Greyhawk and like the earlier like books and stuff like that, and so I started reading up on the Harpers and checking out a bunch of stuff, and then I was like, oh my God, I should write a song about the Silverhands, and I think it's just like, it was kind of like a cool, like more applicable, like cautionary tale to everyone that's just like, look out for each other, because that's the best we can do as a race.
That's good.
So, but that one was really fun because I remember with the modulation at the end, it got very big band kind of sounding, and Brian and I were like, oh my God, we should play sax on this, So we like getting to play sax and write, like I wrote the sax parts right when we got to the recording studio, so it was really fun to do and like try to rediscover.
That's awesome. Wish.
Wish is based on a short story written by my friend Rachel Autumn Deering. And it is about a silent mute girl who comes to the town of Silvery Moon, and she sings on the Moon Bridge every night, but she doesn't speak to anyone. She just sells wares, and then just goes back into her shoddy, life of solitude. And there is a young aspiring spell guard that is, or a young man aspiring to be part of the spell guard. So he notices her, and then he becomes like enamored with her and goes to seek her out, and she just rejects him at every end, and he doesn't understand. And so he eventually, the power of infatuation kind of overwhelms him, and he goes into the spell guard's vaults to find a scroll of wish, in which he casts the spell to make her fall in love. And then when she finally does fall in love with him, it turns out that her master before her had cursed her, so anyone that she loved and kissed would immediately die by her own hands. That's deep. So so it was a cool short story, and I was just like, this is really rad. I wanted to write something about it. So that one's kind of in a way like co-written by me and Rachel Autumn Deering.
That's awesome. Is there a place where people can check out more of her work?
I mean, I wish I had a website or anything like that, but just Rachel Alm Deering. She does a ton of comic books. She has a comic book called Anathema, about a lady lycanthrope. It is fucking awesome.
Nice.
And she does a bunch of work with comics and stuff, but she also has a book out called Husk. And I know that she's currently writing another book, but her name is Rachel Alm Deering. So if you like horror, or you like comics, or you like horror comics, please check her work out.
Awesome. The next track is Heavy Metal.
Yeah, so Heavy Metal was that was fun because it was just like a slow jam that I had always played on acoustic guitar and never had a purpose for. And when I let Bryant and Jeff just kind of run with it, we all kind of got the structure and the groove. And again, I was looking for, lyrics, inspiration. So I had the idea of making it. It's actually the second, the continuous part to the Lascivious Underdark. So in the Lascivious, when this woman gets lured and captured by this illithid, the Heavy Metal is about her lamenting lover, who's always he kind of knows what happened to her, but he's just still almost soul quest for closure.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like a lament of his, singing about how these underdark creatures just meddled with his his perfect life.
That's cool. The final track on second edition is called Second Wind.
Yeah, and that's another one of Bryant's ripping ass riffs. So I'd done so many things about spells and stuff like that for so long, and I was just like, man, I feel like I need to write something else. So we were thinking about it, and I was like, we don't have a fighter song, and Bryant he's not much of a gamer, but he's he likes what we're doing. And since he was a fighter, I decided to write something for him. So we wrote the song as after the feature, Second Wind, for fighters, where once you're down, you can cast it to gain additional XP and get up again and go do it. And then it's kind of just like a relatable story for everyday life too. It's don't let the bastards keep you down.
As you're just describing some of your music and stuff, it reminds me, there's a Canadian band called Double Experience, and I think, they're a little bit more enamored with, video games, but I mean, I think because of the subject matter of a lot of your songs, you're kind of, being, lumped into that quote unquote nerd rock kind of genre. Is there, would you ever seek out and maybe play with kind of like-minded bands such as yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. We're always looking for bands to play with like that. It's just, I feel like D&D is becoming or just RPGs in general, becoming very pop culture right now.
Yeah.
So, I really expect to see a bunch of bands popping up, just doing the same kind of stuff that we're doing, maybe different style, but the same idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a band in our town called Velveteen Band. And they're more like a steampunk puppet band. It's a really cool trip, it's kind of different, but that's what I like. I like more of the these bands that are just not just we have a bunch of guitars, but it's oh, we got this show idea, and it's oh yeah, man, that's cool. I feel if I was going to go see a show, I want to see some pageantry and some cool shit, because I've seen so many bands with dudes in t-shirts and jeans just playing the same music, and it's okay, that's cool, but
it would be cool if somebody and maybe there is one, but if somebody organized a festival that sort of incorporated the music and the gaming culture together, some sort of nerd stock or something like that.
Well, I know there is MagFest, which is Music and Gaming Festival.
Nice.
It started on the East Coast, and we have friends in a video game band called Kirby's Dream Band, and they one of the dudes runs that. But, so I was music and gaming, fucking dub, put us on it, man. But unfortunately, I think it's more geared towards only digital, video games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, they don't do so much of the board games or, card or whatever, role-playing games. But yeah, I wish somebody would set up some sort of festival like that, because we would be super down to play.
Yeah.
I know we played a small Comic-Con near us at the fairgrounds once before, and I would love to play Comic-Con down in San Diego, and again playing conventions like Gary Con and stuff like that. that's what I'm really into.
You guys just came off a tour. I saw this picture of you guys out in the snow, and I thought those poor young fellows from California, here they are out in the snow. But I mean, I guess that's just rock and roll life, eh?
Yeah, man, that's how it goes.
What's
part of the adventure?
What's the craziest weather encounter you've ever had on tour?
That was probably it. I know a long time ago. There was a couple of tours I've done before that, and they were always on the northwest area. I remember the first tour Bryant was on with Gypsyhawk. We were driving through Kelowna in Canada, and it was a field of white, like you couldn't see anything. And I was just like, well, I don't know. That stuff doesn't really faze me because it's just cool. You know, you're like there, and you're like, what the fuck is this? You know, it's fascinating.
Well, what's next for Gygax? Are you guys always the type of guys that are writing new material? Are you writing new material now, even though the album has already come out?
Yeah, we're going to be writing this weekend. We have a few new songs that like Brian and I have had in our back pockets, and so since we have a chance to, you know, slow down and do that, I think we're gonna play that, and then the other plan is just to, you know, find a cool band to tour with, and maybe get, you know, a good working tour in order in the future for, you know, more of those states that we haven't covered. But again, you know, it's a hard thing. It's a costly endeavor, so we really have to just be calculated and prepared for it. So it's not going to come as often, I think, as people may want it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty tough these days to make a go of rock and roll or music in general, it seems.
Yeah, man, which is why we just do it, because we're like, fuck it, like we're going to do this because we like to. You know?
Yeah, which is maybe, you know, rock and roll in its purest form should be exactly that.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Just cut out the capitalism.
Yeah. Well, listen, Eric, it's been awesome chatting with you today. I really appreciate your time, and you know, I'm a huge fan of Gygax, and I really have enjoyed your recent record, second edition, which I believe you can go on Bandcamp and snatch it up on there. That's probably the best place to get it, eh? Yeah, gygaxguild.bandcamp.com. Awesome, man. Well, like I said, it's been a privilege and an honor talking to you today. The album is called A Second Edition, came out March 16th on Creator Destructor Records. The band is Gygax, and this is Eric the Cleric on the line with me, Jack Antonio, right here, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much, dude. It was so pleasant.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.